Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Hard Fight History. Today we are beginning the second of our three-part series through Napoleon. We're doing two different three-parters,
Yeah.
6 weeks on basically French history, French Revolution, followed by the Napoleonic era. If you're jumping right in at Napoleon, welcome. And if you're here after listening to the French Revolution Part 3, welcome back. The saga continues. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing good. Really, really confused by French history at all times. Really confused by this era sometimes.
Yeah.
And just really confused how they let like very small man just take over after this. But we'll get into it.
Yeah, height does not make the man.
It
As
does.
we'll learn.
It does.
You know?
That's what I've heard.
All right, here we go. Getting into it. Act 1, On the March.
That's what you're gonna
August.
go with? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Right on. All right. August 15th of 1769, Napoleon Bonaparte is born in Corsica to Carlo Buonaparte and Marie Letizia Ramolino. So the background of what's going on in Corsica at this time is Pasquale Paoli's resistance movement against the Genoese. Pasquale Paoli is their big revolutionary resistance hero, and the French are stationing troops in Corsica because the Genoese had just ceded the island. Corsica is like a small island off the western coast of Italy, kind of like south of France, just out there in the sea because it's an island.
Yeah.
It had just been ceded to the French in 1768. There's an interesting anecdote about Napoleon that both his parents, particularly Carlo, but Marie Letizia was with him as well. Because they were fighting with Paoli.
Yeah.
They had like suffered a defeat. I'm not sure where, but Maria Letizia was pregnant and they were having to retreat. And so you can quite literally say that Napoleon was on the march while in the womb.
Wow. It's Corsican history is weirdly interesting in that there's like also like a hero of theirs that just was killed. I think this guy named Yvon Colonna, who was
recently?
who was like he was jailed in France for like murdering, I think like a very high up official of the Corsican government, and he was just it was like a big thing in like French news like a month ago or 2 months ago in March.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, no, this is still Corsican independence or revolution. The revolutionaries are pretty consistent throughout history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The age of 9, Napoleon or July 19th, 1778, age 9. Napoleon and his little brother, Joseph, are admitted into the program, this military program, this military academy at Brienne. Joseph goes to seminary school. They're admitted into this elite program because they were technically French nobility. I think you call him like the regional governor, the Comte de Marbouf. He may have been having an affair with Marie Letizia, aka Napoleon's mother.
Yeah.
And so he bestowed Corsican nobility on Carlo and Marie Letizia, and also helped connect the Bonaparte family into, or get them opportunities, basically.
And from my understanding, the father takes up planting, and it's not like a great place to plant. Like it's Corsica, from my understanding, it wasn't like a great place to plant, but they like do pretty well with it. They're like profession, and what Napoleon is trained in as a kid is a planter. You know, yeah.
Do you know what the crop was, or?
I don't know what the crop was. I think it was something about horses. I'm blanking on it. I'm blanking on. I left my book. I left my book in New York, and I apologize.
It's all good. Yeah. The military academy in Brienne, he slept in a cell, and they had pretty rigid sleep schedules. Apparently, and again, I'll get into the sources. The ones that I'm sourcing from is first The Age of Napoleon by J. Christopher Harold. Very good. If you want to read like one medium length-ish biography on Napoleon, this is probably the one. Napoleon by Felix Markham, which is pretty light and small. And then Napoleon, a biography by Frank Lynn. This is the longest one, but also the most detailed. And Frank Lynn, he's the one who says that the reason they had such strict schedules is to at the military academy in Brienne is in order to crack down on rampant homosexuality, because you just have like a bunch of teenage boys running around, no no girls, so they're just they got things and they want to do things with them, so
they want to do things with the things. It's
yeah, that's story of mankind, right?
Yeah.
He's really good at math and history. Those are both his early proclivities that Napoleon shows. I think more so in math. Like he's known particularly for his brilliance in math. He's bullied a lot at this military academy because he loved Paoli and was constantly espousing the virtues of Paoli and the right of the Corsicans. And he caught a lot of heat for that, and also just for being Italian or Corsican, because he's not technically Italian quite yet, but he caught a lot of heat for being Corsican. And he's like, we're all French. You're the odd man out. You're goofy. You're stupid. We're going to beat you up. Also, but fuck you, because I want to do things with the things, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy.
frequently fighting, frequently getting caught in fights.
In the book, I don't have my book on me, but it's going to be Ruth Skur, Napoleon, A Life Told in Gardens and Shadows, which kind of looks more at his like life as told through like the many gardens and like places that he like built throughout the world. He loved gardens, he loved building, and that is this kind of starts at the at this school, at this military academy. He builds a garden like right outside of his building, and that's like one of the ways they bullied him. I think they like ran over his garden.
Oh,
and it was like a fucking thing. Like he was a little fucking gardening boy, dude. little boy gardening.
That's cool. I would make fun of that guy.
Yeah, you make
wrongfully so.
Yeah,
wrongfully so. Let me say, I would be wrong, but I would definitely tease him. Fucking nerd. You know, make him eat dirt, eat worms.
That's he learns this is like a serious part of the Enlightenment is like men having like this kind of control over nature. Yeah, and we'll see how those ideas influence him later.
Yeah. Also how being bullied a lot will just make you kind of hate mankind and want to take over the world. No, there's definitely a little bit of that.
Man, he has some issues that we know a lot. Yeah.
Got to work through it, got to talk about our traumas, everyone.
Yeah.
Right. September of 1784, he arrives at the Académie Royale Militaire in Paris. He's selected from the school in Brienne based on how well he did in mathematics. And I think his rank at this time is second lieutenant at age 15. February 1784, his father dies. So the family enters a period of financial hardship. He's the big man in the family right now because he's technically the second born, but the first died. And so he's the eldest of Marie Letizia had a shit ton of kids. I think he has like 11 siblings, 8 of whom are born at or are alive at this time, with 3 more that would come. Yeah. But point being that he needs to become an officer as fast as possible in order to make money for his family.
It was not a great farm that they had. It was not a great like they did something. I think they they made like a gamble on a crop or something, and it like didn't work out.
Was it silkworms?
No, something.
I feel like silkworms is in the fringe of my knowledge on Napoleon.
They fucking did something. It was like, oh, that should work, and then like the way like the financial aspects did not work, and they
wrong horse.
Yeah, something like that. It was something like
it happens.
Yeah.
1785, 1789. This is he's working as an officer. He's stationed. I'm just going to run through where he's stationed because this is not as notable of a period in his life. Stationed at Valence, Ajaccio, which is I think the capital of Corsica. I think that's the city where he was born. Stationed at Paris as well as Auxonne, and he's reading a shit ton. He's like devouring books. He's very austere as well. Like, the Franklin biography, it talks about him sleeping like 6 hours a night and ruthlessly sticking to 6 hours a night of sleep, and only eating like one meal a day, like one meal. That's all I need. And then back to the books because he's just reading a bunch of like military history and trying to learn as much as he can about particularly the early Roman histories
Yeah.
and like artillery manuals and whatnot, because a big component of his rise is just the availability and refinement of a new technology, that being the cannon,
Yeah.
and just artillery general, and just being like, okay, what can we do with this technology? How does it apply to the battlefield?
Yeah.
So 1789, as we've discussed in the previous three-parter, the French Revolution begins. Napoleon and himself, I'm just going to kind of give a few select instances to contextualize him within it.
I
Go ahead.
When you think about the like him being like into ancient Rome, do you think
Mhm.
that was him personally or just a symptom of the time? Like they
It
all were
definitely
in
was
the
of the times
yeah,
for sure.
everybody loved Rome and was like
Yeah.
even in the Republican, like yeah, I mean, because they're talking about republicanism and they're talking about those ideals, and that's apparently that was where it happened at
Yeah.
for in some form. I don't know about early Roman republicanism. I
Yeah.
haven't read
There
about
was
that.
a big, there was, they,
Roman Republic.
French men collectively had like a big hard on for like the Roman man, and
Yeah.
portraying themselves as like the new Roman men, austere and honor. And
Putting Marat and up in the pan like all these people in the pantheon, putting
yeah,
the sans-culottes wearing the hats of freed slaves,
yeah,
the
doing
free
what is
men.
best for the
Yeah,
nation, and putting the
in
collective
Rome.
above the self, and particularly like fraternity, brotherhood. We are brothers of the fatherland, and all this kind of like big hard on for all the Roman stuff. Like especially Saint Just I mentioned in the last episode, he
Yeah.
like modeled himself after a Spartan. Like, that's the way he's described, and kind of he was trying to enact Spartanhood and be
So
like
he
Spartan. I don't need food. I don't need much food. Don't need much sleep. I don't
so
need much materials. I need to do. I need to do. I'm all about doing. I'm a doer.
oh that's a different from I thought
I'm gonna go
modeling
out
after
and
Spartans.
fist fuck life.
I meant yeah, that's different from what I thought you meant by like modeling so the Spartans. I meant you like just thought I thought you meant like just throwing babies
And we hate
off
Athens.
cliffs and fucking
Hey,
having sex with other men.
yeah,
Like
it's appreciating the strength of another man.
Spartan, dude.
Filling them up. All right, yeah. Need some oil on them pecs, brother. You've been working too
Strong,
hard. Can I give you a back rub? It's not good.
strong and beautiful.
Bros don't let their bros have back pain. Okay, I'm gonna throw it out there. Bros,
Okay.
don't let other bros
Yeah, I don't agree
have
with this.
back or shoulder tension.
I don't
All
agree
right,
with this.
that's all I'm saying.
I don't agree with this. So
Help your bros.
I don't agree with
Give
any
them
of
a
this.
back rub.
I don't agree with any of
If
that.
you're liberal with your back rubs,
I don't.
your bros should be liberal with their back rubs with you. And then nobody has shoulder pain. And then everybody can focus on what they need to focus on, which is the gains. Am I right, fellas? Hashtag bros don't let bros have back pain. Let's make it happen.
I don't
Okay.
agree. I don't agree with any of this. So
This is all me, but it's a strong. I'm planting the flag in the hill here. Okay, planting the flag.
this is the
in
place
hill.
you want to die on.
Yeah, man.
This is the, okay.
Well,
all right.
I mean, I won't die for this, but
Okay. No, I mean
this is
that's
one
where
of
you're
my
planting a
causes.
flag. You're
One
planting
of
a
my
flag.
causes: normalize back rubs. All right, let's make it happen, fellas.
I'm not a fan of that. So don't
Okay,
touch me.
all right. You can stay in your masculine prison, and I'm gonna enjoy my back rubs. All right. I will enjoy giving and receiving my back rubs. Okay, bros, don't let bros have back pain. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I'm sure it's gonna be pleasant.
That's all I'm saying. Napoleon himself, as far as the revolution is concerned, he's loyal to the king, nominally, and loyal to the laws. But his sentiment also his early sentiment, let me say that, lays with the revolutionaries. As evidence, he joins the Jacobin Club in Corsica. And for a while, he's kind of back and forth between Corsica and Paris. Again, talking a few instances, Napoleon in the revolution. July 6th of 1791, the National Assembly at the time requires all army officers, to take an oath to the Constitution. And many royalist officers resign. Napoleon takes his oath. So he may have done so opportunistically, because he's constantly framed as the quintessential opportunist, which may be. Or maybe he really was at the time, still young, still enraptured with the ideals, takes that oath and sincerely means it. Who's to say? I don't know. But this is also like they issue that call shortly after the flight to Varennes, because they're trying to consolidate and make sure make sure everyone's good. We're on the same page here, right, fellas?
He has a heavy outsider personality.
Yeah,
So like,
that's fair. That's a good
and
point.
it does be seeming like he'd be climbing, he'd be socially climbing ladders. And that was something he was very interested in doing.
As an outsider craves acceptance.
Yeah.
Good point. June 20th, 1792 should be a familiar date. He's eating with a friend on the Rue Saint Honore. He sees a crowd heading for the river, and him and his friend decide to join this crowd and see what all the fuss is about. This is the crowd protesting the king's recent veto. There were three measures and two of them the king decided to veto. We talk about it in the French Revolution episode, part 2. Particularly, the incident that Napoleon witnesses is that this mob gets to the king and they force him to choose between the white hat of the reaction or the tricolor cockade of the revolutionary government of the people. And King Louis XVI chooses the tricolor cockade. And he also wears the bonnet rouge of the sans culottes, and they put the red hat on him. And this is kind of like the forcible imposition of citizenship status on him. They're saying like, it's subtly, unconsciously almost, or implicitly, they're saying you're no better than us. You're one of the people also, which does not bode well for him long term, as we discussed. Napoleon, he writes in one of his journals that he would have had, he refers to them as les canailles, which translates into like the mob or the rabble. He would have had him shot.
Yeah.
Because this is King Louis trying to appease them, and he shouldn't. Like, it seems to be Napoleon's thinking by 1792 that there's no room for, you shouldn't negotiate. You shouldn't try to play both sides. You should just, if they want it that way, let it be and fucking shoot them,
Again,
plant that flag on the hill,
He's a gardener, dude. He knows about, sometimes you have to turn over a certain part of a garden, or you have to rip out the weeds.
You have to rip out the weeds.
And you have to you have to, so some destruction is necessary in his mind, in his profession, in his like hobbies. So
to secure the orchid.
You
can't let the weeds kill the orchid.
To secure to maintain order in the garden.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Everything has its place. And if you just let these people,
then they're gonna choke out all your crops.
The garden angle is really prevalent.
Yeah, it's working. It's working. All right, dig the metaphor. All right. Yeah. August 10th, 1792. This is the like Jacobinical attack on the Tuileries. I want to call it a soft coup. I don't know if you would call it a hard coup. Coup.
Yeah. I mean, a coup is like a firm. It's a general uprising. The coup is like a small amount.
This reads to me more like a solidification. This is why I call it a soft coup. Because it's basically just a reaffirmation of the established order, but also with some bloodshed.
I don't want to. I don't. What's weird?
It's
whatever it is. Whatever the fuck it is. Yeah.
2,000 of the king's men, I think specifically the Swiss guards, are butchered, tortured, looted, and mutilated. Napoleon is a witness to this, and he's described some pretty gnarly stuff of not only like decapitations and parading of heads on pikes, but just ripping corpses apart and corpse mutilation, all sorts of whatever bad gnarly thing you can think of occurred.
Yeah.
And he notes specifically that the King Louis XVI made a massive blunder in again trying to appease, because he ordered the Swiss guards to stand down whenever they first approach. And Napoleon was like, this is another instant where King Louis XVI should have recognized the stakes and recognized that it was being taken there. So he should have taken it there. He should have met the challenge rather than let this happen to him.
Yeah.
Solidifies it. Clearly, there's a change of thought going on here. August 17th, 1792, so 1 week later, the Legislative Assembly orders the confiscation and sale of all church assets. So the monastery of Saint-Cyr specifically is dissolved. Napoleon's sister Eliza, who was a nun there, she had to leave for Corsica, and so Napoleon gets papers granting him leave as her escort. So he falls out of Paris for a little bit, goes back to Corsica. He gets back into the limelight. I think he popped back and forth between Corsica and France a little bit. He has a major falling out with Pasquale Paoli. I don't really remember specifically what about. He just comes to view Paoli as I think as a sellout, or I'm
He
not sure. There was like a big
he like
upset there.
he like wanted his approval,
Yeah.
and like Paoli, from my understanding, Paoli is like in like what's it called? Well, he's in like England or some
Yes.
shit. Yeah, he's
Yes.
in
Yeah.
England, and he wants like the proof, and like he does never. It's like something they have a. It's real personal. It don't seem like it's actually about what Paoli's saying. It seems like
Yeah.
it's personal, and then they have a falling out, and you don't fuck with them no more.
Yeah.
And that's like it's
Yeah.
yeah. He has a lot of emotions. This man.
Yeah. Very emotional man.
Yeah.
For sure. He gets back into the limelight in September to December of 1793. He's reemployed because he also was like discharged for a second. And there's this whole kind of waffling of his official status in the French army. He's back in it at this time, September to December 1793. You have the siege of Toulon going on against the British because the war is going on. And he's sieging Toulon, again, southern port of
Mhm.
France. He gets into an alliance with this guy, General Dugommier. There was this other guy in power for a while who wouldn't approve Napoleon's battle plan. Dugommier does, and Napoleon leads this 2,000-man charge against Fort Aiguillette, I think is the name of it. Napoleon himself is wounded in the thigh, and he has to recover for a while in Marseille. But this is one of his first huge major victories that gets him some national recognition. He's promoted to senior gunner in the Army of Italy, and he begins campaigning against Austria, specifically Piedmont, which is like northwestern Italy as we would know it now. But like Italy wasn't Italy.
Italy was a mistake.
It was a
Germany
big,
isn't real yet.
yeah.
Yeah, like these, like most of like the things were like, oh, these things have been there forever. And
Yeah,
no, they just
not at all. Yeah.
1870 something. It's not like yeah, it's I know Germany's like 1880.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or like
82 or something.
we'll talk about it subsequent
Yeah.
episodes, but a lot of the seeds of German nationalism are in reaction to Napoleon. It's like we're gonna let this guy, ham fist us. No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. We need to do something about this. May to June of 1794, he is collaborating on Italian invasion plans with none other than Augustin Robespierre, Maximilian Robespierre's little brother. And they're getting down. They're collaborating on the plan. He's petitioning the Committee of Public Safety for approval in the endeavor. And meanwhile, Robespierre's dealing with the Hebertists and specifically the fallout from executing both the Hebertists and the Indulgence and like Danton, Festival of the Supreme Being, all is going on around this time. Suffice to say, Robespierre has larger concerns at this time. So it doesn't happen, but it's interesting to see like as the unraveling of the revolutionary government is occurring, as the snake is beginning to eat its own tail, Napoleon is beginning to say like, hey, I think we could invade Italy and really pull it off and really do well. I think, he's positioning.
Yeah.
July 24th of 1794. This is the Thermidorian reaction, or July. I think it was July 28th. I have it wrong here. Sorry about that. But late July, Thermidorian reaction. Napoleon swept up in it, temporarily suspended from the army. He's indicted and arrested as a terrorist.
Yeah.
So in August, next month, he's imprisoned. There's some allegations emerging that he had deposited French gold into Genoese accounts. I don't know, may or may not be true. But the charges are dropped fairly quickly regardless. General Dumerbion says he can't afford to lose an officer of Napoleon's caliber. He was still useful to France.
Yeah.
And so he's let out. And this is where in the 6-part series, we pick up. It's 1794. Napoleon's out of prison and he's got designs on Italy. Some time passes. April 1st of 1795, Napoleon is engaged to Eugenie, also known as Desiree. Desiree, I think he met her in like while he was recovering, I think, in Marseille. They don't end up getting married. I just figured I would mention it as like a marker of time. Napoleon, he heads back to Paris to look for more work, and he cozies up to, at this time, Paul Comte de Barras, or Barras. Barras is how it's spelled. I think it's pronounced Barras. He's like a typical reactionary Thermidorian, one of the guys who has done really well for himself after the fall of Robespierre and the revolutionary government.
Yeah.
This becomes his new patron.
Yeah. He it's weird because it's like it's just these like figures that like pop up there like, all right, dude. I've seen it feels like they're like, I've seen everybody else try to take control of this government. I feel like I feel like I'm not in that bad of a position to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Barras seems like that type of guy. He's just
Yeah.
like wants to use Napoleon as a we'll get to.
Yeah, as a consolidator.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see how cyclical all these things are, to where somebody will pop up and maintain control or be on top of all of these crashing waves for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And they'll either like escape with their lives and do really well for themselves, or or die, or get guillotined. You know, and it's like it's a mixed bag.
It's a hot game. Life is life is a hot game.
Life is a hot game.
Yeah,
guys, you know how it is.
This is
And Barras is just one of the guys who's surfaced and is trying to ride the waves at this time. June 21st, 1795, there's a new constitution. Executive power is placed in a 5-man directory. So now we've gone from Paris Commune of a bunch of delegates, which was kind of de facto ruled by the 12-man CPS. Gone away. I'm pretty sure gone away is the Paris Commune, or at least the idea of it, if not the thing itself. But we've got this 5-person directory. So you see CPS is 12. Now we're whittling it down a little bit, a little smaller, 5-man directory with a bicameral legislator, 2 houses, 500 in the lower house, and then an upper house of ancients or elders. It's not quite as liberal as it may or may not seem. Non-property classes could not vote. Mm-hmm. So you still have a vestiture of power in just people who own property. There's also the decree of 2/3, which said that we're, with the new constitution, we're going to form a new legislator, but that decree of 2/3 says 2/3 of it has to be chosen from the old, because they're fearful of royalist sweep, of like a bunch of royalists coming into power and saying like, all right, we vote for a new king. And it's like, no. We're gonna maintain some of the establishment. We have to maintain
it. It does. Yeah, it seems like the after the Thermidor, like basically the upper class is just kind of consolidated, and then they left out all that same Kula shit. They like, fuck all that shit. Yeah. Fuck all that shit. But all the upper classes, niggas was capitalists and motherfucking, had own land. Were like, all right, let's just kind of consolidate this. Yeah. And most of those people who were like educated enough to even be in the room at that time was, they had certain interests.
Yeah.
Or, pertain to certain interests.
That's one of the reasons that Simon Schama cites as a reason that the French Revolution failed, is because it didn't actually fundamentally address or change structure. It just kind of shook up the bag a whole bunch, and I almost want to say the natural social stratification that just happens, that just is, maybe took place, and there was a new upper class and a newer lower class.
I thought the lower class, those people never kind of changed. The people who didn't have bread just didn't have fucking bread.
And there's starving people before and there's starving people after. And there's this like new, maybe non-aristocratic bourgeois liberals who did well, okay before the revolution, and then came out of the revolution on top. And they were the new overclass. Yeah.
It's the merchant class.
Yeah.
merchant class kind of like they were the ones,
Yeah.
with all the money but they
Bought
had
up the
these
church
revolutionary
lands.
ideas and all
Yeah.
this. But then the other aristocrats are gone, and they are the top because they killed
They
them
are the
all.
new aristocrats.
They murdered them all because they were
Yeah.
part of this thing, and they're just
Yeah.
like, and now, yeah. So
But it's like a new flavor of the same old thing,
yeah, no,
and like
it's
a new development of the same thing,
that's you can argue. Everybody's like, oh, this enlightenment or this time of like revolution, uh, that they get rid of kings, but then you replace them with like businessmen
Yeah.
and people who have like their own tiny fiefdoms
Yeah.
in terms of like or merchants or all that type of stuff. But yeah, all
Yeah.
right.
August 15th of 1795, Napoleon is ordered to join the Army of the West as an infantry brigadier. This would be, in his eyes, this is why he doesn't take it. He sees it as a demotion. He doesn't
Yeah,
want to get sucked into Vendée because the royalist uprising is still hot,
yeah,
and he doesn't want to get involved with it. Understandably, he's stalling, and Comte de Barras gets him a job at the Topographical Bureau of the Committee of Public Safety, which it's not the same as it was before. It was already staffed with generals who just didn't have a post, and it was stretched, I think, to a much wider membership than 12. So
yeah,
he's chilling out there for a little bit. And then August 3rd of 1795, you have the revolt of royalist Michel Le Pelletier. And he launches his march on the Tuileries. He's backed by this other general, Menu, and the Paris garrison, about 20,000 National Guardsmen. Comte de Barras needs Napoleon's help to put this down. And so Napoleon, he establishes a cordon around the Tuileries Palace with recently requisitioned artillery. So this is another moment where you see the artillery come into play and change the future, as a new technology does. And he repels like waves of guardsmen, although he's outnumbered. And he, unlike King Louis XVI, fires upon these royalists, fires upon the people who are uprising, kills
yeah,
about 600 insurgents, but puts down the revolt and secures power for Barras and the Directory.
yeah.
Barras names Napoleon the hero of the hour. Barras resigns as commander-in-chief of Army of the Interior and names Napoleon his successor. He's given a pretty nice stipend, and he's a de facto governor. He has control of the police and the Secret Service. So certainly a promotion for him.
Mm-hmm.
This is also around the time when he begins his affair with Rose de Beauharnais, also known as Josephine de Beauharnais. She's got a kind of a questionable, scandal-ridden past, also very bad teeth, and she also was having an affair with Barras. That she was like one of Barras' mistresses, and was
It's
just kind of like passed off to Napoleon.
it's a weird like she has she's like a aristocratic woman of the time, or wealthy kind of. She has some like money, and she also like lies about her age. Like she's older than Napoleon, and like she's lying about her age. And this is the thing: it's she will become his wife, and she will become the first empress of
Yeah.
France.
Yep.
But it did she can't have children. She's not gonna have. She can't have children. She has trouble
Yeah.
conceiving.
Yeah.
So this is a weird part of Napoleon. Kind of like buys her houses. I forget where the house is, but he buys her houses outside of Paris, like a house outside of Paris. When he's kind of
Malmaison.
yeah, when this is yes, that's Malmaison. When he's like newly ascended and he's like on the way up, and she's kind of the woman of the time.
Mhm.
But yeah, and also yeah, he's gonna build massive gardens
Yeah.
there.
Mm.
Also, he loves gardens.
Yeah.
He's still gardening, dog.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Still keeping up with it, man. It's good that you're keeping up with it, man.
He would like basically have her design the gardens, and then he would come in like, this is gaudy as shit, this is bullshit. But like it was his way of like kind of keeping her busy. Is like they
Yeah,
would
'cause she
redo
was-
these houses and like
Yeah. She was throwing her thing around, man. At this
everybody
stage.
was everybody.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
it's also like he's fucking other people also. Like
Not
you
quite
can't
yet.
just
Not
huh?
quite yet. Not
No,
quite
I would
yet.
argue. I would argue he
I
was
don't know.
always he always had like he always had a mistress. I would argue that he doesn't start. It's not Josephine that makes him fuck or like cheat
I don't
outside the
know.
house.
I don't know. Maybe.
I think that that's
Frank
kind of a constant.
Yeah.
in this time. But that's like it's not just this absolve, but that's we'll get. I guess we'll.
Because Frank McLean mentions a lot of his mistresses, but I do not know if that study was exhaustive. Let me say that he might have been getting it at other times. But I've also read that he had like a weird thing around sex that like he didn't necessarily enjoy it as much as other men or whatever, that he was kind of like, let me get this out of the way, because I have to do it like eating. But
the track record of Josephine and Napoleon, like she loved that dude,
yeah,
and like he loved her. Like
yeah,
he kind of banished her,
uh,
or like kind of shat on and like divorced her. But like he like until he's like the one that's like dying, like he really thought about Josephine as like his one true love, I guess, or like the one that was like the most important to him. Because he
yeah,
has one after this, but she's like much younger, and they don't seem to have the same type of. Although she does bear kids. It's a whole thing. It's really complicated. This nigga has a lot of affiliations. Let's just
yeah.
yeah.
This gets us into Act 2, consolidation.
Yeah.
So on March of 1796, this is when Napoleon and Josephine are married. I've read that they each thought the other was rich, and like that's
Oh yeah, she doesn't really have any. Yeah, she doesn't have any money. Like she's kind of like
that's why
she
she had
has
a bunch of
money.
debts. Yeah.
Yeah, she's from like a class, but she's not
Yeah.
caked out.
She runs in the circle, but it's one of those things where it's like a big LA movie star.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, they're broke as shit.
Yeah.
But they're still a movie star, but they're fucking broke as shit. So it's
Yeah.
like they see Napoleon's like, well, I'm close to the directory now.
Yeah.
Let me make sure that I consolidate my wealth and power by obtaining wealth. So, and then Josephine's like, this dumbass is gonna pay off all my debts. And it's like they both played each other and they both got duped. But a love did flower between them, undoubtedly.
She loved him, dog. She would miss him till her dying day, dog. Even she still like talked about him like he was her true love, and he banished her. He told them he divorced her until they get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
but set her up with a bunch of money. It's all
yeah. There's like a few love letters of theirs that I have in this other book that I want to read. I haven't got to it yet, but I will. Napoleon, in that same month, I believe March 1796, he's appointed by Barras to the army of Italy. Barras thought the way to take down Austria was through Italy, kind of like a localized Afghanistan, of like the way the U.S. quote unquote took down the USSR, sucking them into an unwinnable war of attrition in foreign country. Same idea.
Yeah.
So Napoleon arrives at Nice, which Nice is like basically right on the border of modern France and Italy, and he's preparing it up. He arrives. The troops are mutinous and underfed. There's around 37,000. And it's time to blow off some steam, boys. Time to get the bag. All right. So the Italian campaign itself, I will date from April 1796 to October of 1797. And I'm going to be real. It was pretty boring to read about. It's a lot of like, if you don't know the geographical region well, it's a lot of just names. And then if you don't really have a clear understanding of the exact military hierarchy or who's who of this time, it's just a lot of names. It's like this Italian name, this French name. So I'll give you the highlights. I found it pretty. I was just like, God damn. The looting of Milan is Milan's one of the first cities that's taken. It's looted, as well as the rest of Italy. Like, this is where France gets a lot of Italian art. I think some of which is returned, but not all of it. And so like a lot of major Renaissance pieces are made off with. A lot of the war is concentrated in northern Italy because the Austrians are sending in troops. And so there's like battles going, and Austria borders modern Italy in like the northwest. And so there's a lot of like action going on up there. but also the Austrians are like flanking across west and making for France and trying to get on French soil. That way they'll drag the French out from like northeastern Italy or even like peninsular Italy and back towards France. Rivoli is one of the major battles and major victories that Napoleon has, in which is like northwestern Italy. So again, closer to France, and he like repels the Austrian invaders. In June of 1796, so 2 months after the beginning of the campaign, Napoleon has a letter to Barras where he says, I hate all women. I am in despair. My wife has not arrived. She must be detained by some lover in Paris.
Yeah.
And she was.
Yeah.
She eventually does visit him. That was like one of the major issues, is that he's commander of the army of Italy. He's got a reputation to uphold, and his wife is running around on him with this guy named Hippolyte Charles.
Oof, what a name. What a name. One wow. It also, it's again noticeably, it is the fact that like she is knowingly running around with somebody, like people can see that, is actually the issue. It's not the issue is not that they fuck, because everybody fuck other people.
Yeah.
They just you're supposed to just be secretive about it.
Yeah.
If it's you out here just running around with nigga like going to plays and shit.
Yeah.
And everybody, you go on opera and shit, and everybody seeing you, it's like, come on, dog. Keep it secret.
Yeah.
Keep your side piece.
Yep.
People don't know game. I'm gonna give it to them one day.
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna give him a piece of that game one day.
You're gonna be the hitch of the 2022s.
No, I don't want to do that, dude. No,
okay.
That's a. I don't want to help nobody.
Keep it all for yourself. Subscribe to your Patreon. That's what you got to do, man.
The Patreon,
That's what you got to do.
Come on, dog.
That's where it's at. That's where the bag's at. That's what I've heard.
Stop saying the bag. You're gonna kill that saying.
I feel like everything's immediately killed. I got to use it while I can. I got to ride this wave. I got to enjoy my time in the sun. And then, once we collectively kill it all, as we do on the internet, then we can move on to the next thing. But it's in right now. It's in right now. I'm dating this podcast episode by saying it.
Go ahead.
Flag in the hill. That's what I'm all about this episode. A lot of flags, a lot of hills. Okay.
I'll let you do that. I'll let you kill yourself. I'll let you hang yourself.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. February 10th, 1797. This is where you have the Treaty of Tolentino, which is signed between France and the Papal States of Italy. They cede Italy cedes Bologna, Ferrara, and Romagna to France and pays them 30 million francs, I think. Napoleon begins to campaign into Austria. So he's consolidated Italy, and then he swings up northeast into the underbelly of Austria. March and April of 1787, he offers a peace treaty to Vienna, to Austria, with a deadline of April 18th. And he's saying peace if Austria gives Belgium to France. It allows it to occupy the left bank of the Rhine River and gives it the Ionian Islands off the coast of Greece as well. Austria also needs to recognize the Cisalpine Republic of Milan, Bologna, and Modena, three like city states in northern Italy, I think, while Austria keeps Istria and Dalmatia off the coast of Croatia, and Friuli, which Friuli was interesting to me because it's like right off the coast of Marseille. And it's like, why would you still allow Austria to have an outpost right off the coast of France, unless it was not viable for them to station it militarily or stock it militarily, and it was like good for trade? Then that makes sense. This is like the basis for what becomes the Treaty of Campo Formia between Austria and France, signed in October of 1787.
It's notable things that happen on that, like with the treaty with Austria, the almost taking of Vienna. Beethoven and like Handel, George. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Beethoven and Handel are like both in like Vienna at the time.
Mm,
and like I think like
mm.
Handel like is particularly like survives like a French artillery shelling or something like
Huh.
that. And Beethoven specifically like anti Napoleon. I
Yeah.
think he was like he's you know because he's Austrian,
Yeah.
and yeah. So yes, it's very interesting to see like at the time like they both were like composers, you know, or having to deal with like the invasion of the you know Napoleon in
Yeah. I
France,
mean,
the Napoleonic era.
it's interesting as an American to learn about this stuff because
Yeah.
it's like we just know all these names.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know the overlap.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the overlap when it happens because like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Hey, I know those guys. you know.
That's
There's also this incident or this suspicion that Napoleon has against General Moreau,
mm-hmm.
which General Moreau was, I think, in like Switzerland
Mm-hmm.
and or somewhere nearby. And Napoleon's in Austria and he's sending dudes over to General Moreau saying, like, hey man, I'm in Austria. If you come and back me up, that'd be sick. And maybe we could really take it right to Vienna and score some better treaty terms. And
Yeah.
Moreau doesn't say anything. And Napoleon starts to talk with the Austrians about Campo Formia because he's unsure about General Moreau. And he keeps on writing to Moreau. It's like, dude, where the hell are you? I'm signing a treaty right now, unless you come and back me up. And then maybe we can do something more. And then it isn't until the talks are like finalized and solidified, then General Moreau decides to cross the Rhine River. There's suspicions that Moreau might have been conspiring with the Directory, that they had been thinking, the Austrians had been thinking there might be a royalist uprising in France. So let's drag our feet a little. And Moreau had been thinking maybe something will happen in the war. Maybe the Austrians will capture Napoleon and just kind of recognizing him as a threat
Yeah.
and thinking that like Moreau could fill that power vacuum, perhaps, or potentially somebody could. That they were basically kind of putting Napoleon on the altar, so to speak, but Napoleon doesn't end up becoming the sacrifice. And then it isn't until after the things happen that Moreau's like, "Oh, you wanted me to cross? You wanted me to cross the river?
Yeah.
You wanted me to cross? Ah, okay, sorry, I was confused. You know,
Yeah. That's I mean that's very that's Mao did the same thing
yeah,
during the you know during the great when they're like running from like nationalist forces and they're supposed to link up with like another general.
yeah,
And he like I'm not gonna link up with you because I need to get to a certain place first so I can be the leading army, so I can be the
yeah,
leading general,
yeah,
and I can have that said about me. So like you won't come in with your larger force
yeah,
and be the more dominant general because it was all about
yeah,
power and who's you know yeah
yeah. Just
yeah
classic bullshittery. You
yeah
know,
no it's just dudes like okay thinking like oh I could really like have a lot of power here and like I'm
yeah.
just kind of see
Let's see
not
what
we're not
happens.
all on
You
the
know,
same side.
yeah. September of 1797, there's a royalist agent arrested in Trieste. He's got some papers on him which implicate General Pichegru, who is one of France's top generals.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, excuse me. Barras uses this as a pretext to smear the other members of the Directory. September 1797, this is what's known as the coup of Fructidor, because that's the month corresponding with the revolutionary calendar. There are these rightist forces that Napoleon and Barras want expunged, specifically Carnot and Barthélemy. General Augereau, who's a subordinate general of Napoleon's, he's sent to put it down. And then he gets a big head because he's the one in Paris. And so basically Napoleon threatens to resign in order to force the hand of the Directory. And Campo Formio, the treaty with the Austrians, has not yet been ratified. So he still has that big bargaining chip. And if he's the one who resigns and he's the one who negotiated, then it's like, then France will be in trouble. And so Barras is like, oh shit. Ultimately, Barthélemy and 50 other royalists are sent to Guyana. And being sent to Guyana, it even happened it was a punishment implemented by the revolutionary government. I didn't mention it in previous episodes, but it was occurring back then. I think by the time of the terror, by like the 1790s, if you didn't want to guillotine somebody, you sent them to Guyana. And so that's what they did. February of 1798, Napoleon writes a letter to the Directory on the implausibility of the invasion of England without naval supremacy. He's back in Paris at this time. Campo Formio has been ratified, and he's been chilling out for a little bit. They want to know what to do next. Napoleon, he's also not willing to let anyone else conduct the invasion of England. So that's another reason why he might just be trying to sabotage the idea of invading England, but he's also not wrong.
Yeah.
The Directory and Napoleon, they kind of realized that at this time, they either had to launch yet another coup within Paris in order to consolidate power, or win laurels in a different field of battle. And Talleyrand, who I think is foreign minister at this time, he suggests Egypt.
Yeah.
And Napoleon is in agreement because the beys or like the regional governor, the princes of the Ottomans, had been unfairly treating French merchants at the time, or at least that was the claim. And so they used that as a pretext in order to launch this invasion of Egypt. Napoleon is also thinking, I think there's a lot of this just comes down to like LARPing or just looking back on the historical precedents and reenacting those. And so he's thinking about Alexander the Great and what a threat conquering Egypt would pose to British interests in India. I think he is also thinking about the Crusades and like the Holy Land. And he's thinking, oh yeah, Egypt is good because I'm not only emulating Alexander the Great, but Godfrey of Bouillon or whatever, you know.
I understand there's also like the part about there being a lot of like of wheat and bread, or like a good amount of like food that can come from Europe, come from Egypt. Also, the French do the same thing to Mexico through the pastry war.
Yep.
Where they pretend like, oh man, there's like a riot or whatever that affected some French businesses, and that you have to pay the money for this one pastry shop that kind of took the precedent of being the thing. Like that's like the thing in all the media sources and all the journals or newspapers at the time. And we're gonna go to war with you because we need you to pay for this pastry shop. So it's like, they love doing that. That was, I mean, I think everybody
you need a pretext. You need a pretext. If you're gonna invade, you need a pretext. That's all it is. In order to pay for the war, France sends a bunch of generals abroad to loot Rome, Holland, and Switzerland as well in order to shore up them finances, because you need a pretext and you need some coin in order to launch it. That's what I know. That's what I know. This gets us into Act 3, Rays of the Sun. June of 1798, August of 1799. This is, again, what I'm dating Napoleon's time in Egypt. First, Malta, which is like right off the southernmost tip of modern Italy. This small little island is taken as a naval base. It was run by the Hospitaliers, Hospitallers, how do you say it in Hospitalier, whatever. It's like this ancient order of knights that fought in the crusade, and specifically like doctors and whatever. And they had control of Malta basically since the crusades. And I think people had been popping in and out who would establish like nominal control. But the guy who's in charge of the Hospitallers is like Prussian at the time, but 200 of 300 of the knights are French. And so they just kind of let it happen, you know? And so now you've got a supply base for this assault.
There's a weird history also in like West African, like in the Songhai Empire, that they particularly would order, they get mercenaries, and like their favorite mercenaries were French knights in like the 1600s.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So there's like a weird order of French knights, and you can still find them like in the Sahel region of like Mali. There's like people who are like from French knights.
Huh.
Yeah. Because they just stayed there. Yeah.
Napoleon lands at Marabut, which is about 8 miles from Alexandria, and he begins his assault. July 21st, you have the Battle of Giza, also known as the Battle of Mbaba. The pyramids themselves are in view. You've got a bunch of French soldiers refreshing themselves in the watermelon fields near there. Napoleon's opposite, the general Murad Bey, he's got his forces. He orders a cavalry charge. Napoleon had sent out one of his top generals who actually dies. I'm not sure if it's, I think it is in this battle. He had sent them out as like a forward unit to go do some scouting, I think, named Desailly and Rainier, was what we would say. They're doing some scouting. They come back as this battle's going on. So the cavalry charge is coming toward the French soldiers in the watermelon fields. And Desailly and Rainier, they move into that gap now created between the enemy cavalry and the infantry. And they just unleash, there's this devastating volley from Napoleon's troops against the cavalry. And then Desailly and Rainier, they clean up the infantry. And it's pretty much a sweep for the French. And they loot all of like the Mamluk corpses and take all their rings and whatever kind of treasure they have on them.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Napoleon enters Cairo. And he's basically, he calls himself ruler.
Yeah.
But he also calls himself a friend of Islam. And he gives instructions basically as soon as the French land that he wants Alexandria preserved and not looted. And he says to Cairo, or he says to like the ruling elite of Cairo, he announces that Cairo and the 14 provinces of Egypt would be ruled by a council of 9 sheikhs, and we would just have a French advisor. We'll just throw a little advisor in there, but he recognizes the importance of religion, and he does so at home domestically a little bit later on, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But it's interesting to see that he sees religion as a means of social control to the point where he's willing to leave power, at least nominally, in the hands of the ruling elite, of the sheikhs, of the ulama,
Yeah. There's he also it's his first time like kind of controlling a society, it feels like.
Yeah.
Like where he's like truly
run.
in charge of the society. Is also builds I think he builds Tivoli Garden in Cairo. He builds a garden as kind of a meeting place for like that's like kind of like trying to beautify the city. Yeah, and also the I think we'll get into it a little bit after this, but there's uprisings, there's kind of like there's some things that happen, and
no, it's not all hunky dory.
No, they didn't accept French rule, right?
July 31st of 1788, correct? You have the Battle of the Nile. So shortly after this great victory under the pyramids of Giza, his fucking dumbass admiral, I think he's an Admiral Bruez, he basically, I'm not sure whose fault it is. There's some speculation on that. He leaves a wide opening for British Admiral Nelson, and he basically wipes out 13 out of 15 of France's ships, completely like devastates the French Navy. There's 1,700 French casualties associated with this. At the same time, around the same time, Josephine's affair with Hippolyte Charles becomes public knowledge, scandalizes Napoleon. He's like, all right, I just lost basically the cream of the crop of the French Navy, and now everybody knows I'm a cuck. So it's not going great. Another thing that happens while Napoleon is in Egypt, another big notable thing, this is the foundation of the Egypt Institute. It's got 4 initial sections: mathematics, physics, political economy, and literature / the arts. This is the like expeditionary corps. And that's another thing, is that he leaves with like a bunch of scientists and professors and whatever else. They come with him with the express intent of like, we're going to do our job in Egypt, So this is kind of like, I don't want to say, I don't know how to frame it exactly. It's like you're exporting the Enlightenment almost. It's like there is the conquest, but there's also these Enlightenment ideals, this new sense of curiosity that's being applied to the entire world. And this is one of the first voyages where you see that come to fruition, especially with the discovery of the Rosetta Stone in July of 99, a month before Napoleon leaves.
So it would with the like the Enlightenment spreading, of course, right? with the Egypt and like from my understanding with the Ottomans, they already kind of possessed a knowledge that was like it was pretty good knowledge, and that there was more of an exchange where they were taking stuff back to France
Yeah.
rather than it being like we're going to spend the Enlightenment here, we're taking shit back to France that like we find very interesting because you know they put. I remember they took that in the Ruth Sker's book, Napoleon: A Life Lived in Shadows and Gardens and Shadows. He takes like various plants back and like
Samples.
samples studying because that was like his he also like this is he's very into science. He's very into he's a planter, dude. Love the plants, dude.
Modern man.
Gardens, dude. Loves gardens. I couldn't tie this one in as good, but it's still there.
Good. Another thing that happens is that he gets the muftis of the city to issue a fatwa, which ends up becoming backed by Mecca, saying that the French were allies of Islam so long as they did not interfere with religious practices. There is a student uprising in October of 1798. They kill like 250 Frenchmen until that uprising is like violently put down. So obviously there's discontent. Not everybody buys that. We're all, again, it's not honky dory,
Yeah.
February of 1799, there's a mass slaughter of prisoners, of the prisoners of Gaza and El Jaffa. There's about 2,000. Napoleon's on his way with his army to Syria to intercept the incoming Ottoman army coming down from Turkey. And another 2,000 to 3,000 prisoners are put to death after they surrender. I'm not going to try to justify a mass slaughter, but in the defense of the French, they did only have enough food to feed themselves. So
that's all right. All right.
Pick your poison. It's either like we let all these people starve in mass, or like we put them to the sword. It's like it's a hard game to play. I'm not getting in those waters. I'm just throwing out. Just saying. I'm just saying.
What's one thing that's like interesting about this?
You let them starve. Is that more humane? I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't know what.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know this one.
I don't know.
I would pass over. I would pass over this part of the story.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's one thing that's interesting about him, like Napoleon being like, "Oh, we're the friend of Islam." This is going directly during the Wahhabi wars, like with the first like Al Wahhab, like the guy who invents Wahhabism, and his like relationship with the Saudi family, and they're like, what Wahhabism is like this fervent thing that's like very fundamental Islam, and like that kind of becomes like this is like in 1811, like 18 to 18. I know like Wahhab, like he lived to 1792 or some shit like that. I think
so. Yeah.
But like this is a time like even in this time, do you have these powers coming in and being like the Ottomans are fighting kind of the Sauds or against the kind of the Saudis and being like, oh, we're not a fan of that type of Islam. And then the British are like also fighting. There's like a second Wahhabi war where they're fighting against like kind of radical Wahhabist Islam. And it's weird to see the French come in and be like, we're a friend of Islam.
I see.
In a deck because they're in
with the context of the Wahhabi wars.
Yeah, we're in wars with the Ottomans and wars with the British. So
I didn't think about its application in that sense, because Wahhabism, we've talked about it on this podcast, that it's like one of the cornerstones of Al Qaeda's ideology.
Yeah,
but it ends up popping up as a result of colonialism and
it's
foreign expeditions.
I think we kind of briefly touched on the Saud. It's a part of the Saudi royal families, like up as they link up with Wahhab, and then they press. They like have this like they Wahhabist uprising or whatever. I don't know what it's called, but like they that's like how they come to power, and in this general region, and how they become a predominant family is by aligning with the Wahhabi or whatever that dude's name is. Al Wahhab. Yeah.
One thing that's interesting about the Gaza and El Jaffa massacre is the way it's portrayed later on. Like there's this big painting in the Louvre that shows Napoleon in El Jaffa, and it's framed as though he's like the Messiah, and it literally shows him like curing the sick and whatnot, and it's like a huge painting and clearly just distorting the events entirely. I'll post it. April 17 99, he fails to take Acre. Napoleon and his army retreats. He's got his army of 13,000 at this time. It's been significantly whittled down, about 4,500 casualties, 2,000 dead, 2,300 wounded or sick on the road back. They burn the countryside to slow the advance of the Turks. June of 1799, he sends bands and prisoners of war ahead into Cairo to display the venture as a victory back there, because he's basically trying to, just again, propagandizing fake news, right? But using it, employing it to his own advantage. There are 2 Nile uprisings that are put down by the French. There's El Hajj Mustafa, and I think one that happens underneath a guy who just goes by El Modi or El Mahdi, which the Mahdi, that's the same guy, the uprising in Saudi Arabia, 1979. He calls himself the Mahdi. And so it's interesting to see this Messiah-like figure returning, re-employed or employed before and then re-employed again. That I just like that it popped up again. So I was like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah.
August 17th, 1799. This is the departure date for Napoleon. There's news of a Russian invasion heading towards France, I think. And like Russia and Turkey had, I'm not sure about Russia. I know Turkey in particular had joined the Second Coalition, which is like some Italian states, as well as Prussia and Austria against France. And Turkey had just joined them. So, and there's also like internal rumblings in Paris about whether there would be another coup. He leaves General Kleber, I would say Kleber, General Kleber in charge. And there's this quote that Kleber has about Napoleon's departure. He says, "He left us with his breeches full of shit," which I thought was funny. It's like, we can't take care of this situation. This is not good. And he knows it. And that's why he's leaving. He's not like, anyway.
This was the funny thing about not funny, but the thing about Kleber is Kleber gets assassinated in Cairo like in 1800.
Oh
yeah,
sounds
by
right.
like a Syrian, like a student. But it's funny. He gets assassinated, I think, in a garden, particularly that like Napoleon in a garden also.
Oh wow.
With that like Napoleon like looked over or like saw and like thought it was nice and like so just missing death by like
by a hair, by an inch. Yeah. October 1799. This is when Napoleon arrives back in Paris. There's divisions in the Directory primarily, and rumblings in Paris generally over the issue of inflation. Their fronts are crumbling. He's having to contend with other generals. And there's also some people asking whether Napoleon should be tried for leaving his army still in Egypt when he clearly hadn't cleaned up the situation.
He left, and they're fucked. And they're like, it keeps getting hotter. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
They got to get out of this somehow.
Yeah.
Barras, it's found out that he's been negotiating a Bourbon restoration and he's attached the price of 12 million francs. It's like 12 million francs. I'll put a Bourbon back on the throne.
Yeah.
It's all good. You can count on me. And so he's not to be trusted. You've got monarchists, neo-Jacobins, and Thermidorians as the primary contenders for power in a turbulent Paris. And so on November 9th, 1799, you've got another coup. The ancients, or the ancients, the elders, the upper house are removed to the Tuileries. They declare a state of emergency, and then they're removed to St. Cloud, which again is like outside of what we think of Paris proper, outside the loop. I like to think of it like that, to avoid a Jacobin counter coup. The ancients are surrounded by 6,000 men under General Murat, who's one of Napoleon's subordinates, comes in later. Napoleon is named commander-in-chief of all of the Parisian troops, and he's conspiring with like 2 members of the Directory, specifically Joseph Sieyès and Roger Ducos. So he kind of cuts Barras out because Barras is a royalist and Napoleon is a Thermidorian, I would say. So at St. Cloud, the legislature meets. The ancients are in the Gallery of Apollo, which is like a room in St. Cloud. The 500, the lower house, they're in the Orangery, which is another room of St. Cloud. And there's this delay. So the upper and lower houses of the legislature are allowed to mingle and talk. And the lower house becomes unconvinced of the danger to Paris, and unconvinced of the need to name Napoleon as commander in chief. And Napoleon hears about this, and so he's like, "All right, just let me talk to him. Just let me talk to him." So he goes in there, and he starts talking to him at first, and things get heated, and things get out of control, and he starts blustering, he starts yelling at them, and a few senators, they discuss appointing a new directory, since 3 out of 5 of the old one, I think, I had resigned. So they're like, we need a new directory, and it would cut Napoleon out entirely. And Napoleon ends up getting punched, and he starts bleeding, and he's got like a nosebleed going on, and he's taken out of the room because they might have done more violence to him, but like his little brother Lucien and some others hustle him out. And Lucien comes out and tells Marat and everyone else, and the mob that's kind of assembled out here, and all the army troops, that an English knifeman had just tried to assassinate Bonaparte.
Those dirty English knifemen, dude.
Those dirty, that internal fifth column, man.
Yeah.
It's ever present. And those English conspirators that just tried to assassinate our commander in chief, we've got to go in there and sniff them out. And so Marat's guardsmen go in there, flush out the traitors. End result, 2 a.m. in, I think, November 10th at this point. 50 lower deputies with the ancient, they invest power in a triumvirate of Napoleon, Joseph Sieyès, and Roger Ducos. This is the beginnings of the first consulate. And so, if you think about the trajectory of the Parisian government, we've gone from 12 in the CPS, 5 in the directory, 3 in the first consulate. So we're whittling it down,
Gotta love some of those prime numbers.
Yeah, man.
Gotta love those prime numbers.
All about those masculine primes.
There we go. Guys, thank you for listening. This has been part 1 of our Napoleon 3-parter, but also part 4 of our general French Revolution to the Napoleonic era series. Right. Thank you for listening to Hard Fight History. You can find us at HFH Podcast on Twitter, Hard Fight History on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can find me, Josh Stokes, your host, at Joshua B. Stokes on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Henry, where can they find you at?
You can just find me, Henry Price, on Instagram, Milo Hendricks on Twitter, Henry Price, Hard Fight History on Amazon, if you please.
Guys, thank you for listening. Come back for part 2.
That's right.
We'll see you then. Okay. Peace.
Peace. Take care.